What's up, YouTube? It's Mike Iaconelli. I'm going to show you the floating worm. Check it out right here. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. I want to talk to you about a forgotten about, sort of a lost technique, and it's a lure bait called floating worm. You know, this bait is good all year long, but especially in the spring and fall, this thing can be a killer. But the floating worm, unlike, say, a soft minnow bait or a fluke style lure, there's a certain way you got to rig it to get this thing to run right. And it uses some different components, and I want to go over that with you today, show you how to rig this thing, and then I could show you how to work it a little bit. You know, the first thing is the hook, and we want to use a 3 or a 4/0 offset hook. Just a traditional offset, but definitely you want to go with a little bit bigger size hook, because that bigger hook is going to help this worm slowly sink, and that's a key part of this floating worm equation. The next thing is the bait, and I prefer a 6 or 7 inch straight tail worm. This is a Berkley power bait called a bottom hopper. Color wise, man, I use natural colors like watermelon and green pumpkin, but I love what I call shock colors on this technique. Colors like chartreuse, white, and this is probably my favorite right here, which is a color called methyolate. The next step is we're going to get our hook. We're going to start a normal Texas rig. We're going to go in about 1/8 of an inch and bust out of that worm, and just everything's normal. We're going to go around the bend, but instead of rigging this plastic straight like we do with a Texas rig or a soft jerk bait, we're purposely going to put a kink in this worm. So I like to measure the bend in the hook, and I like to go about 1/8 of an inch in front of where that bend meets the worm. And I'll actually pull the worm forward, and then I'll insert the hook point to get it to look really weird and almost that J kink in the worm. And that's real key on getting this bait to get a side to side, almost twisting motion to it. Next step is, this is a bait that you want to fish on a fluorocarbon to braid leader. So I'm going to go with a shorter 10 to 15 pound, and I use Berkley Trilene 100% fluorocarbon leader. That one right there is about 14 inches, 12 or 14 inches. And to that, instead of tying directly to the braid, this is such an important part of this floating worm, I'm going to use a barrel swivel. I use an oversized barrel swivel. I prefer the silver color to actually give it a little sheen and shine. And the size of that barrel swivel is also going to help this bait with that slow sink that we need on the fall. Final components in this setup are the main braid line, and I like 10 to 15 pound Berkley X9 braid, cast so phenomenally. And this technique, although you can throw it on a light to medium action bait caster, I prefer to throw it on a spinning rod. Really gives you a lot of control, gives you a lot of casting distance, and you could skip this bait under trees, under docks, and I like a little bit bigger spinning rod than the normal guy. I use a 7/6 medium heavy Ike series finesse rod. This has got about a 70-30 mix. That 30% tip's really gonna let you cast it. And then the last component is the reel. You know, go with a 20 or 30 size reel. I prefer the 30 size Abu Garcia Ike series reel. That combination of the rod, the reel, the line, that swivel, the hook, and finally that kink in the worm is going to give this bait unbelievable action. And on the fall, it's going to do something really special. All right, so now we've got the setup. I want to go through a typical cast and how I'm going to work this bait. Keep in mind, the pause on this technique is really key, and about 70% of the fish that eat it on the pause. You know, the first thing is I'm going to throw this bait around cover. Trees, brush, logs, rocks, docks, whatever's there, I want to get this bait near cover. And because this is a spinning rod, I utilize a skip cast a lot. Here's a cypress tree right here, and I'm just going to make a sidearm skip cast to to the base of that cypress. It's gonna put it up real close to that tree. I'm actually gonna let it sink just for a couple seconds. A lot of times I'll count 1 or 2 seconds, and then I'm gonna begin a retrieve with short twitches. But about every 6 or 8 twitches, I'm gonna throw a pause into it. And the same thing, that pause I'm gonna let sink for 2 or 3 seconds, and I'm gonna twitch it again. I'm gonna pause, let it sink for 2 or 3 seconds, twitch it again. And I like to do that almost all the way back to the boat or when I'm out of the zone of the fish. One of the key parts to getting that side-to-side action as you twitch it is that weird J, that weird bend in the worm. So never rig it straight, always put that crook in the worm, cast it around cover, throw in the pauses, twitch away, and I promise you, all year, but especially in the spring, you're gonna catch some big bass and get your arm ripped off. For more lessons and tips, hit that subscribe button.